Happy to welcome Stephen. Thank you for giving us your time and agreeing to share some insights today. Uh, for the benefit of the audience, I would like them to know that Stephen is an author of not two, not three, not even 10 books, but 21 marketing and management books. And some of these are award winning books. And today, the talk is on the very important topic of building and maintaining your long term brain health. And this talk, is based on his award winning book, Better Decisions, Better Thinking, Better Outcomes. The talk will be of about 40-45 minutes duration, followed by a lively question and answer session. Sumit, you have the book with you. Why don't you introduce the book and Stephen to the audience as well? Go ahead.
Well, I think you've already introduced Stephen. All I can say is Stephen is my colleague, my mentor, my guru. I met him a few years ago when he was orienting me to take a program, and I felt, he's got depth. And now I'm not going to steal his thunder. Um, Harish has already shared, author of 21 books. And I read this book, as Stephen just mentioned. What I liked about it is it has all the aspects. Why, we already know why, right? But we always want books which give us the direction, the how, the what. And this is a very comprehensive one. And I say this in a way, a lighter note, but actually, seriously, if you haven't read this, you've missed something. Don't miss it. And I requested Stephen, can you please talk about this to our forum members? Just for information, all the people who are joining for the first time, we run this leaders forum in India. It is a collection of leaders, people who are managing teams, and we meet bi-monthly with the intention of sharing knowledge, collaborating, and this little community is also going to engage in projects, to help, the world around us. So today we have Stephen. Thanks so much for joining us, and all yours, Stephen. Completely glued and look forward to everything that you have to share.
Welcome, everybody, and what a nice introduction. I'm going to put my email address in the chat box just in case. I know sometimes people have questions, but they don't feel comfortable asking them in an audience of people they don't know, particularly if it's personal and might regard a family member or something. So if you ever want to send a question, I'll check later on my email, and feel free to put a question either in the chat box or send me an email, and I'll check it later. So I am very passionate about this subject. And the reason I got into this was I had moved back to the United States. I was living in Australia at the time. My dad started having some health issues. I went back. I thought it'd be for 6 days, and then it became 6 weeks, and suddenly it became 6 months. And my dad started having some early Alzheimer's disease symptoms. And so I started studying that. What could I do as his primary caregiver? And then after he passed, I started thinking about myself. Is it genetic? How's it going to impact me? And am I going to be alone when my brain goes on the fry? And so I continued to study. And then I realized that it's not DNA. It's not a genetic disease. It's a lifestyle disease mostly. Only about somewhere between 4 and 5% of the people who have Alzheimer's or even other forms of dementia is it because of DNA. There's another 5 or 6% for other reasons. And then really about 90%, it's a lifestyle. So I'm going to talk about that and then how it impacts our decision making. But really the key message is why we all need to think about our long-term brain health. So I'm a bit passionate about this. I'm happy to share this information with you. I'll talk a little bit. A lot of this is in the book, and I'll talk more about it a little later. So as Sumit said, I've written 21 or published 21 books. I've got 2 more coming out, actually 3 more coming out next year. I've been teaching leadership for the last 25 years. In fact, I've mentored, coached, or taught, trained leaders from every continent on the world except Antarctica. And it's too cold for me to go to Antarctica. I'm a warm weather person. So, but I've trained over 10,000 people in the last 25 years. I do a lot of one-to-one coaching. I'm also a certified health coach. So as I was doing the research for this, I became a certified health coach. And I lived in Singapore for 21 years and visited India many times. I miss India. One of my favorite meals of all time was in the Foreign Correspondents Club in Delhi, and it just simply consists of dal and naan and a good cold Indian beer. So it's one of my favorite meals. And I also lived in Australia for 12 years. So I'm glad to be joining you today. As Sumit said, the book is called Better Decisions, Better Thinking, Better Outcomes. And everything I'll talk about today is based on the research I did for that book. And then since the book came out, the book's been out a few years, and I continue to research this subject. And now, my first job out of college was at Texas Instruments. And I remember that we promised the world a paperless society. We were going to, all these new computers and desktop computers and word processing machines, everything was going to create a paperless world. Well, boy, did we fail in that regards. We are swamped. Our brains are fried. This is even before the pandemic. Forget all about the stresses of being locked down and whether you wear a mask or don't wear a mask when you go out in public, or having to take care of your family members who might have gotten the COVID. Our brains are fried, and we run in a 24/7 world. And here's some statistics for you about that. We have about 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And as adults, we make about 45,000 remotely conscious decisions every day. And remotely conscious things like, when you get dressed, which shoe do you put on first, the right shoe or the left shoe? If your shoe has laces, you put your right shoe on first, do you tie those laces? Do you put the right shoe on, then you put the left shoe on, and then which one do you lace first? Where do we put our car keys? Where do we put our purses? Everything is so unconscious. We're on autopilot so much throughout the day that unfortunately, when we get into the workplace or even our personal lives, we stay on autopilot. And that autopilot impacts the way we make decisions, and it impacts the health of our brain. Our brain processes about 400 billion bits of information every second, but we're only conscious of about 2,000 of these. So there's a lot going on up here, a lot going on, and it's constantly active, and we're not aware of it. But that's why at the end of the day, we're so fatigued, because the brain's been working hard from the moment we wake up until we go to sleep. And it still works while we sleep, just not as hard. And this is crazy. The average person checks their mobile device about 100 times a day. Now, you think about that. If you're the average person who gets 8 hours sleep, you're awake for 16 hours. 100 divided by 16 is roughly 6. Means you're checking your mobile device every 10 minutes that you're awake. And that's just nuts. And that's one of the reasons that's causing our brain fatigue and our brain fog that we're having, because we can't put the darn thing down. So I'm going to give you some advice on ways to get around that going forward. We also have this wonderful urban acronym called FOMO, which is this fear of missing out. One of the reasons we check our mobile phones all the time is we want to know who's having lunch, what are they having, what's the latest thing they've posted, who's making comments on Twitter, who put something on Instagram, and we're constantly checking these things. Well, I would highly recommend that going forward, FOMO should mean fear of mind overload, because that's what we're doing to our brains. We're overloading our minds. It's one of the reasons we make poor decisions. It's one of the reasons that we're tired. It's one of the reasons that there's so much anxiety in the world. And quite frankly, one of the reasons there's so much divisiveness in the world. And the main reason for that is our brain. Our brain is wired to become more reactionary under stress. And when we're under stress, we fall prey to what we call binary decision making. This is where our brain, to protect itself, our brain to prevent it from overheating, when we're under stress, what it does is it tries to limit our options to 2. That's what we mean by binary choice, A or B, 1 or 2, black or white, this or that. And very often, as you know, when we need to make an important decision, a strategic decision, even our personal lives, we need many options. So, even if you're shopping for a new refrigerator for your home, you want to look at 5, 6, 7 different models, or, from 3 or 4 different stores. You don't want to limit yourself to 2 so that you get the right refrigerator, because that's an investment you make, every 5, 7 years, maybe even longer. So you want to get it right. But if you're under stress, or if your significant other is putting you under stress to make a decision, the brain is going to try and limit you to just model A or model B, or this store or that store. Maybe the same model, but do we buy it from this store and we have to wait 3 weeks, or we buy it from this other store and we only have to wait a week for it to be delivered? All these things are factoring in to the way we make decisions, but it also factors in the way we think. And I often say it's not just what we think, but it's how we think that's so critical. And I'll explain that. One of the things, and particularly you younger people out there, you Generation X's and millennials and Generation Z's of the world, you love to multitask, and you think you're really good at multitasking. Well, let me tell you something. Multitasking is not the answer if you want long-term brain health. In fact, it's one of the worst things you can do for your brain if you multitask all the time. So, but when I'm talking about multitasking, I'm really talking about cognitive multitasking. I'm not talking, any of us can watch a movie on TV and eat a meal. Any of us can be washing the dishes and have a conversation with somebody. I mean, that's not cognitive multitasking. What I'm talking about is when you're like me, when I'm writing a book, and then I'm getting distracted by emails, or if I'm even now, those you listening here, hopefully you're cognitively focused, but if you're on your phone checking emails or checking Instagram, your brain's being divided. And effectively, the brain can only do one thing at a time. So when you think you're multitasking, doing more than one thing at a time, all you're really doing is switching parts of your brain, your working memory, from one task to the others. And that has a cost. It's called a switch cost. So multitasking is not the answer because it's detrimental to focus. It's impacting your ability to focus. So really, when you need to make a strategic decision or work on a major project, you shouldn't be multitasking. It's not going to help you. It's going to impact your decision. This constantly switching between emails, phone calls, any other tasks, it prevents the brain from focusing, and it prevents the brain from engaging in deep problem-solving cognitive processing. And so sometimes you'll think to yourself, why is it taking me so long to make a decision? Well, the reason is you're not focusing on it. You're allowing your brain to be interrupted, to be going back and forth. All these constant notifications that we get from our computers, you hear in the background as I'm talking, all these little beep, beep, beeps. I don't know whether that's somebody's email system or whatever, but all those kind of things, these notifications from your smartphones, your tablet devices, they basically cause stress hormones to be released into action. Now, these are the same stress hormones as if a snake suddenly appeared next to you. It's the same jerking motion you would do. It's the exact same chemicals being secreted into your body and into your brain as if, like I said, a snake popped up, or you're walking across the street and suddenly a car comes racing towards you, or anything like that that's going to cause fear. It's the same chemicals in our bodies being secreted. And if you get a chance, I really do this the next time, particularly when you're relaxing, maybe you're at home watching TV or just enjoying a meal with family and friends, and your phone buzzes. If you can, monitor your body, and you'll find your body will do a little jerk. Your hand will jerk. You might get some palpitations because it's like, who's calling me? What is it? Particularly if it's like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. It's like, what? And so it's and what's happening is a little bit of those same chemicals are being secreted in your body, and over time they compound. And over time, they have a negative impact. I've got a very dear friend of mine, and one of her rules in her house is no phones at the table. No, so when they have their family get dinners in the evenings or meals or whatever, they, they're not interrupted. They actually have I've been there. They actually have some really nice conversations because everyone's not, eating and looking at their phone and not talking to each other. So try and get away from your mobile device whenever you can. Because these notifications are actually training our brains to be in a nearly constant state of stress and fear. And constant fear, prolonged stress is one of the worst things for us. Short-term stress can be good. As athletes know, you get a little adrenaline going in your body. You perform better. I mean, almost all of us, I'm sure, when we went to college, put at least one term paper off to the last minute, and then we did a really good job. We got into the flow, and we wrote our term paper the night before the end of the term or something. Short-term stress can be beneficial. Prolonged stress, continuous stress is not healthy at all. And additionally, the inability to focus is one of the leading indicators of dementia. So that's what I mean by basically when you multitask, you're training your brain not to focus. And this will have long-term impact because it's a leading indicator of dementia. When as you get older, and as we all age, our brain does age. I'll talk about that a little later, and we lose a little bit of the ability to focus, but basically daily multitasking is speeding that up for you. Stanford University did a wonderful research a few years ago, and it revealed that regular multitasking makes it difficult for people to focus on a single task. And the researchers concluded the phrase you see on the screen: multitasking results in goal irrelevant information to compete with goal relevant information in the brain. Let me explain that a little bit for you. When I write or edit, I usually write about 3 to 3.5 hour bursts. I kind of block off a morning or an afternoon, but I get up every 50 minutes and refresh my coffee. And before I read this research, I'd go downstairs in my unit and make the coffee, put the kettle on, and I'd be checking my email, be checking my voice messages, whatever. And then when I went back upstairs to start writing, I kind of had this like, where am I? What am I doing? It would take me a few minutes, several minutes, usually 10 to 12 minutes to get back into the flow of writing. After I read this research, and because what's happening now is what it says on the screen, is that the goal relevant information, the information I need to write the next paragraph or transition to the next chapter, was now competing with all this irrelevant information, like who texted me, what is this email? Do I need to respond to it now? What's this question that came in from somebody? That's goal irrelevant information because my goal was to be writing at that time. So now what I do, and what I highly recommend you do, is I put my phone, I literally put it on airplane mode as if I'm on an airplane. And so when I take my break every 50 minutes and make my new cup of coffee, even though I may not be thinking of anything consciously, the back of my brain is subconsciously thinking about, how do I segue to the next paragraph? How do I transition to the next chapter, wherever I am in the writing? Or am I happy about the last paragraph I wrote? Or how can I make it better? So my brain is still focused on the task at hand because I'm not feeding it a bunch of irrelevant information. So I highly recommend, even if you do it for an hour or 2 hours, whatever you can do, put your phone on airplane mode, put all your devices on airplane mode when you have to focus on some major cognitive task. The other part of the study, this was amazing. I think the first one we could have all figured out. It said that when we multitask, we are less effective while we're multitasking. Well, we all know that. We all know that we're not as effective as if we're fully concentrating on something. But the second one, we also become less effective when we're not multitasking. So it has a spin-off effect. Interestingly, the research also showed that people who multitask on a regular basis, like an almost daily basis, are less effective at prioritizing to achieve goals. And if you really stop to think about that, it makes some sense, because if we can't prioritize, if we can't make decisions, we can't learn how to prioritize. We can't just make those decisions about what is priority today, or what's a priority for the next hour, the next week, whatever it happens to be. So it also impacts our ability to prioritize the actions we need to take to achieve our goal. So multitasking, in the next slide, there's something I hope you remember from this presentation. It's a quote that I'll give you in a minute. When a person multitasks, they are literally reducing their intelligence level. This is measured by the ability to comprehend and understand what they're seeing and what they're hearing. In fact, a landmark study from York University, United Kingdom, show that multitaskers scored 11% lower on a standard comprehension test than those not multitasking. 11%. That's the impact that's being held just on being understand and comprehend either what you're reading or what you're hearing. And so often, people say, we all say to somebody, they say, well, I told you that 2 days ago. And you go, oh, I forgot that. The fact is, you probably didn't forget what they said. The truth is, you probably didn't fully hear what it was because you were thinking of something else instead of fully listening to them. So you never really fully comprehended, absorbed what they were talking about. And as a result, it didn't stick in your brain, basically. So when they have to repeat it to you a couple of days later, our natural inclination is, oh, I'm sorry, God. Well, we didn't forget because we didn't actually receive it because we weren't comprehending what they were saying. Multitasking also diminishes productivity. So you're not, even though you think you're really good at multitasking, it actually diminishes your overall productivity. It elevates brain fatigue. So one of the reasons you're more tired at the end of the day if you spent the day doing a lot of multitasking, again, cognitive multitasking, and it increases stress. That's the enemy today. Stress is our number one enemy in the world. This is what I want you to remember. Sandra Bond Chapman, the founder and director of a thing called the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas, Dallas, she says, multitasking is as toxic to your brain as smoking is to the lungs. I'm going to say that again. I want you to think about that. Multitasking. Remember, in the 1920s, when people, doctors were recommending smoking for stress reduction, but now we know from all the research, all the scientific studies, smoking is not good for our health. Well, Sandra Bond Chapman is making the same analogy here, that multitasking is as toxic to the brain as smoking is to the lungs. So the next time you start to multitask, you might hopefully keep that in mind and maybe say, oh, maybe I need to focus on something. Let me decide which of these is most important and work on that. So that's the background. And that's why I got into all of this. Let me give you some very specifics now about your brain health and what you can do to impact your long-term brain health. I see a comment in the chat box. Let me just see what it says here. It says, I was feeling proud of being a great multitasker. Nowadays, I struggle to focus on one thing. How do you undo the damage? The same way you did it, same way you damaged it. It was incremental. It didn't happen the first time you multitask. It built up. Just stop multitasking. Just stop reducing. You're going to find one of the things that surprised me in my research, as I had learned as a student in high school, in my biology class, that our brain stopped growing around the age of 25. And that's what people believed then. And that's what I was taught. Scientists now know that our brains continue to grow. They grow new brain cells well into our 70s, our 60s and 70s, probably into our 80s and 90s. There just haven't been enough 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds to test and prove it on. But no matter what your age is, your brain is going to continually produce new brain cells, make new neuron connections. It's called plasticity. And anything you do today will help improve your brain health going forward. So you can just stop multitasking today. The initials here were BF, so I don't, Bhaskar, sorry, Bhaskar.
Hi, Stephen, this is Harish here.
Yeah, Harish, go ahead.
Yes, just want to point it out to you that we can see both your slides, the present one and the upcoming one. If that's intentional, it's fine. Otherwise, yeah.
I don't mind. That's all right. You can kind of get ahead. So don't multitask. Don't look at the upcoming slide. Okay, thanks. So I thought you were on the other screen. Okay. Don't worry about it. We're this far into it. So some startling statistics for you. By the way, this is pre-pandemic information I'm going to share with you. So the estimates in 2019 were that there would be a 67% increase in dementia, Alzheimer's, and stroke by 2030 around the world. And that by 2030, it would impact 10 million adults in the United States and 76 million worldwide. Now, I can promise you those numbers will increase as a result of the pandemic. And because we've been through prolonged stress, and you're going to see in a moment what the impact of prolonged stress is on your brain health. So it's only going to get worse. Treating these illnesses will be a $1 trillion industry by 2030. And I'm a skeptic enough to say that's one of the reasons we haven't found a cure for these, is because we're going to spend $1 trillion treating them. It would be nice if we spent $1 trillion and figure out how to cure Alzheimer's, and there is some research being done on that, but you're going to find out in a moment, quite frankly, we don't have to spend a lot of money. We just have to change our lifestyles. And the American Heart Association and the American Stroke Association estimated that roughly 60% of all Americans will develop a brain disease in their lifetime. 60%. Now, I don't have global statistics. A lot of the data is US based, but it won't be very different anywhere else in the world. So 60% will have a brain disease in their lifetime, whether there's Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia or whatever, depression, super anxiety. some find a brain disease within their lifetimes. That's just scary. And also part of this because we're living longer. And like I was a primary caregiver for my father before he passed away. Already 10% of adults in their 60s are already parental caregivers. And even 12% of those adults who are already 70 have aged parents living longer, parents who are in their 90s or in their hundreds, and they're now the parental caregivers for their own parents. And this will only increase because our adults our parents are living longer. We're living longer. Our children will going to have to be taking care of us somewhere down the road. And it's costly and it's emotionally devastating to do so. So our brain is the most metabolically active organ in our body. Doesn't seem like it. We think, we run, we move, whatever, but our brain uses the most amount. In fact, it uses 10 times the fuel of any other part of our body. It also changes more than any part. And that's what I said earlier. I was taught in high school, our brain stops changing at around age 25. No, it continues to change all the time. And it continues to grow and to expand well into our 70s, as I mentioned. Now, the health of our brain is going to be the vital factor in helping keeping dementia and other brain-related diseases at bay. So if you fail to ensure the proper health of your brain or your lifestyle, not giving it enough essential nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and oxygens, then that's going to impact your brain health, your long-term brain health down the road. So it's really a lifetime pursuit. So the gentleman who put the thing in there is that, yeah, you can make changes today, which I'm going to talk to you about, and it will help you improve your brain health. Now, you can't make up for the sins of your 30s and your 40s, but you can, as I'll show you later, anytime you start working on brain health, it's going to be good for you. Now, our brain will age. So that's the bad news. We can't help it. That's a biological function. Our brain will get older, just like our bodies will. But to some extent, the rate of our brain aging and the extent of it is inevitable, but we can control some of it. So the things that are inevitable, things that are going to happen to all of us, our brains will get smaller. They will shrink as we age. The cortical density will thin. White matter will shrink. The white matter within our brains, that will slow our processing and our cognitive functions. And our neurotransmitter system, the little connections, the electrical connections in our brain, will generate fewer chemical messages. That's going to happen. As I said, though, the good news is that we can impact how fast this happens or how slowly it happens to us. The other bad news is that obesity in midlife, in your 40s or your 50s, that's kind of what we define as midlife today, will accelerate your brain aging by up to 10 years. So what I mean by that is if you have a 55-year-old person living in the same community, so this has nothing to do with which part of the world you live in or your cultural things or anything else or your economic status. So take two individuals in the same country, same culture, same economic status, and one is obese and one isn't. One is kept fit. The person who's obese will have a brain that will effectively be 65 years old. And the 55-year-old who is thin and in good health and in good fitness, their brain will be approximately the 55 age, give or take a couple of years. It might be 56 or 57, depending on what they've done in their lifetime. So weight is the number one factor here, particularly excessive weight. So things like sugar, soft drinks, diet sodas, all these are connected with speeding up brain aging. So, if you're sitting around with a lot of potato chips or lots of chocolate cookies and, sodas and even diet sodas, I mean, you think, well, diet sodas don't add calories. It's the chemicals in the diet sodas as well. All this will speed up your brain aging. It will result in you having a smaller overall brain volume than somebody else at your same age and your same social economic condition in your same country. You'll end up with poor episodic memory, which means that's when you start thinking, like what we call senior moments, like, I can't remember what happened at that meeting last week, or I had a conversation with somebody a month ago, I can't remember what it was all about. So that's episodic memory. And actually your hippocampus in your brain will also shrink as well. So that's bad news. I got some more bad news for you, but don't worry, I got some good news coming along here. Okay, so don't hang up now because I'm giving you a bunch of bad news. I'm like your doctor's got to tell you the bad stuff first before he tells you the good stuff. Lack of regular mental stimulation also contributes to what they call retirement-related cognitive decline, and it's not. What do I want to say here? It's not just if you sit in lack of cognitive stimulation is watching too much TV. Your brain's not stimulated by TV. If you read a book, now that your brain is stimulated. So it's again the activities that you do. I already mentioned this point here about the 60%. So bottom line, the aging brain is a lifestyle choice. How quickly your brain ages, to the extent that it ages, basically, it's our choice. It's your choice. It's what we do in our lives. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of this has to do with excess weight. It's not solely excess weight, but a lot of it is. Higher levels of abdominal fat. So the fat that goes around your abdominal area is directly related to reduction in cognitive function as you get older. So again, direct correlation. This is all scientific research. And this is the scary part. So guys out there, men who pack on the most abdominal fat in their 40s are most likely to develop dementia in their 60s and their 70s. Again, so what it's not an Alzheimer's disease. It's not what we, don't wait to think about your brain health till after you retire and think, oh, I'll start getting fit then, or I'll start doing crossword puzzles after I retire. No, it's a lifestyle. It's what you're doing to your bodies in your 40s and 50s increases your risk for dementia later. And the reason for this is that the fat cells that, are part of obesity, they increase inflammation throughout the body and the brain. And so fat cells in the brain is slowing down the oxygen and the blood that's reaching your brain to keep it healthy and keep it working properly. So quite frankly, quite honestly, people with too much belly fat actually have smaller brains than their counterparts, again, in the same socioeconomic, the same country, similar lifestyles, but from somebody who doesn't have a lot of belly fat. So number one place to start is going to be there. All right, so now some good news. The things we do can make a difference. So again, on the slide, I've already spoken to most of these points, but it's also lack of physical exercise. It's spending too much time in meetings and too long on phone calls. It's sitting around too much, as well as your junk food, your fast food, and just being obese. So again, it's what we do in our younger years and our middle life years impacts that. The good news is it's not too late to start on a path to having healthy brain health. And that's what I'm here to share with you now and give you some good news. The other risk factors, lack of regular mental stimulation speeds up memory loss. I wish I had learned this before my dad passed away, because, as dad in his last couple of years, he liked to sit around and watch old movies on TV. And when we would talk about him, the thing about dementia, it works two ways. Sometimes it impacts your short-term memory. Sometimes it impacts your long-term memory. My dad, we could talk about things that happened in the 1940s and 1950s, particularly boxing. He was a big boxing fan. He would know the result of every major boxing match in the 1950s. If you watched a movie, we could sit and talk about the movie. He'd tell me about the actors in the movie again, but it'd be more historical. It wouldn't just be about the movie itself. He'd tell me, all the history of all the Hollywood actors, because he's a big movie fan. But when I was driving him to his doctor's office, we do this once a month, and every time we come to this one intersection, he goes, "Oh, son, look, that apartment complex, it's really coming along well." Yes, Dad. Yes, it is, Dad. That apartment complex had actually been finished 15 months earlier, and people were already moving into it. He thought it was still under construction, and he had no recollection of its status from the previous month. So the next month, as we drove past that, he goes, "Hey, son, look at that. Boy, that apartment complex, that's really looking good. It's coming along well." Yes, Dad. And so what I realized is movies weren't stimulating his brain. So not having good conversations, not socializing, not watching like documentaries or new information wasn't stimulating his brain. And he was relying on his past memories of things he recalled, like about the actors or like about boxing. Also, sitting too long or too much results in brain thinning. And so if it's safe where you are, and I'm going to do it as well, I would really recommend, everyone's been now sitting for 30 or 40 minutes. So if you can, just stand up, just twist your torso a little bit, twist your shoulders. If it's safe where you are, just raise your knees up towards your waist a little bit and just get the blood circulating. So I do this on all webinars now. And then, when you're ready, feel free to resit yourself. In my classrooms, when I teach in face-to-face, I never let people sit for more than 45 or 50 minutes in a session. I make sure we get up, go to whiteboards, walk around, change chairs, whatever it happens to be, because we sit too long. We sit in meetings for 90 minutes, 2 hours. It's not good for ourselves. So that results in brain thinning. That comes, by the way, from research at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. Fatigue disrupts the speed at which brain cells communicate. Again, this shocked me. As I mentioned before, I used to live in Singapore, and I'd make these long flights back to the United States 3-4 times a year, and I don't sleep very well on planes. And so, from Singapore, you go to Tokyo, then you go to San Francisco, you connect. Usually I was going to, somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere on the East Coast. By the time I landed at my destination, I'd been awake for maybe 37, 38 hours, and I'd get in a car, and I'd rent a car and maybe drive an hour to the meeting or to the client's office, to wherever I was going. I don't do that anymore, because here's what that research showed from UCLA. When you've been awake for roughly 17 hours, so that's like a normal day, so towards the end of the day, your brain is operating as if you had a blood alcohol of 0.05. Now, 0.05 blood alcohol content is the legal limit for driving in most of Europe, Australia, and other places. In the United States, it's 0.08. But basically, it doesn't mean you have you don't have alcohol in your blood, but your brain is operating as if you had had a few drinks and you had a blood alcohol content of 0.05. And that's why we make less than optimal decisions often at the end of the day rather than in the morning. If you've been awake for 22 hours or longer, like you're working back-to-back shifts or you're pushing yourself or whatever it happens to be, your brain is now operating as if it has a blood alcohol content of 0.10, which is beyond the legal limit for driving in every country in the world. Again, it doesn't say you have alcohol in your brain. It's a similar impact. It's the way your brain is functioning. So understand. So once I learned that, I no longer do that. If I've been awake for more than 15 or 17 hours, I don't rent a car. I don't drive. I'll go to a hotel and rest for a few hours and then get in the car and drive to my final destination or make a connection, whatever I have to do. It's not worth the risk. Other dementia risk factors: smoking, obviously, having a BMI over 25, not exercising on a regular basis. And we're not talking about running marathons. We're just talking about 3 or 4 times a week, getting some aerobic type exercise, walking, swimming, jogging, whatever you want to do, play tennis. Not eating fish twice a week, not eating fruit and vegetables 3 times a day, having high blood pressure. High blood pressure is probably the second significant factor next to obesity when it comes to your brain health. Having high cholesterol, high blood sugar. This comes from a University of Bordeaux study in France. 6,000 participants, all 65 plus. So again, it's not just what you do in your 40s or 50s, it's what you continue to do in your 60s and 70s is going to impact your brain health or your risk factors for dementia. Now, finally, the good news. I promised you there was some. Healthy lifestyle changes can have a far-reaching effect on your long-term brain health. It includes your ability to cope with diseases and to postpone. I'm not going to tell you that we can prevent Alzheimer's or dementia. We can certainly postpone it by making these changes. For some people, it might actually result in prevention, but at least it's going to help us postpone. If we live to 90, chance of living to 90 or 95 and not having some element of dementia, that's going to be pretty small. You're going to have a really healthy brain, and bless you if you can do that. But better to get it in your 90s than in your 60s, quite frankly. So that's why we can postpone it. Research shows that those who experience the least decline in cognitive functions and memory all share certain characteristics. And it's just the opposite of the previous slide. They do partake in regular physical activity. They do pursue stimulating activities. They're socially active. That's the other mistake my dad made. I couldn't get him out to be socially active. He just, people came to visit, like family members to visit, he'd have a conversation with them, but I couldn't get him to go out and meet other people, to do other things. They manage their stress levels. So you get your blood pressure monitors, monitor your stress, get your stress under control. They eat, obviously, healthily, and they sleep well. So obviously, it's all the good things you do, because as I said before, it is a lifestyle disease. It's not hereditary necessarily. All those factors are interrelated. I don't have a magic wand. I'll go back. I can't say just do number 3, just stay socially active, or just reduce your stress. You got to do them all, quite frankly. But they're not hard to do if you devote yourself to it. As I mentioned before, though, excessive weight is a negative factor for each one of those characteristics. So if you think about it, if you have excess weight, you're not going to want to, I'll go back here, you're not going to want to partake in physical activity. You'd rather watch TV than get involved in stimulating activities. You may not be as socially active. You probably have high stress, have high cholesterol, you'll have high blood sugar, probably not eating very well. And a lot of people with excess weight don't sleep very well. So excess weight is a negative factor for each of these positive characteristics. Let me just talk for a second, and then we'll wrap up in about 5 or 6 minutes and open it up to questions. The point on the previous slide about stimulating activities. The brain likes new things. So one of the things when I coach people on these days, I say, when you drive to work, we all get into routines. We get in our car and we drive the same way to work every day. Back in the days where we're going to work, and when we do go back to the workplace in the future, I shouldn't say go back to work. I know everyone's working, but I mean, when we go back to the workplace, change it up, every other week, take a different route. And what will happen is, one, you'll be a better driver because it's like a different route. So you're going to slow down and you're not on autopilot. But secondly, you're going to notice, oh, there's a new building over there. Oh, a new store opened up over here. Oh, wow, look at the trees on this block are really, the fall leaves are out, really nice. All these sorts of things are happening. And the brain likes newness. Same thing if you walk. Don't walk the same direction around the same neighborhood every time. If nothing else, go the opposite direction. You'll see things differently when you're approaching it from a different perspective. The one thing, so my point here, and Haresh, I see your hand raised. I'll come to you in just a moment. One thing about this is that don't just do Sudoku puzzles or crossword puzzles. You need to change it up. Maybe do Sudoku for a month or 2 and then go to crossword puzzles or go to jigsaw puzzles. But you can't, again, if you get into routine and you do crossword puzzles all the time, all that happens is you get really good at crossword puzzles, but then you stop building those new brain cells because you're repeating the same activity over and over. Haresh, I'm not sure. Did you have your hand up? Did you want to make a comment or question at this point?
I know. I had raised my hand pretty much earlier, and then
so I just saw it. Okay, thank you. I just saw it now. My apologies.
No, I love your focus. I love you. We're not multitasking. So you're listening.
I do. The only thing I multitask is I will have my coffee as I'm talking.
Oh yes.
But it is before 8 o'clock in the morning here. I do. A little caffeine's good for you. Not, again, everything in moderation. By the way, where we're going to talk, the next slide is about food. So we'll get into that now then. The Mediterranean style of eating has been shown to lower the risk for dementia by 30 to 35%. So you can Google what that means, but Mediterranean style is a lot of seafood, a lot of fresh vegetables, and look, they have a glass of wine with their meals often, or sometimes two. They do have desserts as well, but it's a healthier lifestyle. It's more fresh. It's not packaged food, and certainly not fast food. There's a new one out, and interesting. There's been a lot of publicity on this one called the Mind Diet, MIND, and back in September, there was some new research released on this, which substantiates what you see here on the slide. Is that it combined the DASH diet, the old dietary approach to stop hypertension that was created in 1997 in the United States. And it combines that with some of the principles and practices of the Mediterranean style. And then together, the very early results are showing a 35% reduction in the risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. So the latest research is actually bringing that up to about 55 to 60%. Again, it's early days. The Mind Diet was only created, I think, 4 or 5 years ago by a lady in Chicago. And so there's not a lot of research on it, but again, all the early research is showing that combining it with the DASH diet was a lot of things like, you're reducing your salt intake, the portions that you have on your plate and things like that. So combining the two concepts is also having a big impact. One negative to think about and this is for those who like to do the keto diet or similar high-fat diet. Those might be good short-term, but again, just do your own research on this, because some of the early research on this was showing that these high-fat diets impair the brain's ability to detect the hormone leptin. And leptin signals to us when to stop eating. So while we're eating, the keto diets and reducing carbohydrates and other stuff on it, it may also lead us to, again, excessive calories. So just be aware of that. Do some research on it, and there'll be more coming out all the time. And I'm going to give you a link later where you can help stay informed about some of these changes. So much research being done in this area. Reducing, I mentioned blood pressure. So reducing the top number to below 120 results in a 19% reduction in cases of mild cognitive impairment. This is a huge a study of government workers in North America. And it also had a 15% reduction in MCI and dementia. So again, that blood pressure, it's important to monitor it. It's important to get it into the right zones. Walking and thinking outdoors, just going outdoors. Mother Nature is our best doctor that we have. And just going out and get some fresh air, some sunshine, not too much, obviously, but it leads to what they call a 75% uptick in creative ideation. So again, when you're struggling with something and you need to come up with a solution, think of a problem, personal problem, professional problem, when you can, get outside and just walk for 10 or 15 minutes. I'm not even talking about building up a sweat. This is not for aerobic reasons, just getting out into Mother Nature, getting some fresh air, letting the wind kind of blow across your head will stimulate the brain into more creative ideas. And again, just 20 to 30 minutes of daily aerobic exercise. We're not talking about running marathons or half marathons. Get out, walk. If you fit enough to do some jogging, do some jogging. Do a rowing machine, a bicycling, even whether it's a stationary bike or a regular bicycle. Just 20 to 30 minutes improves your overall cognitive function. And then older people were defined in this study as 60 plus, who exercise for roughly 40 minutes 3 times a week. So didn't have to do it daily, but did it a bit longer. Had a significant cognitive advantage over those who didn't do any exercise. So again, if you have parents in your 60s and 70s, if you can get them out there and walking, longer walks, slower walks 3 times a week, that's much better than nothing. Again, that's one of the things I wish I'd done. I couldn't get my dad to go out and walk. Maybe once a week if I was lucky. I wish I'd been more forceful with him. As you know, it's hard to be forceful with your own parent. And quality sleep. Quality sleep resets the buildup of synaptic connectivity. So that's our brain resets those connections. Interestingly, just in the last 3 weeks, and I've got some articles on my website you can look at, some new research has come out that sleeping more than 6.5 hours a night, so more than 6.5 hours a night, actually is not beneficial. 6.5 hours a night seems to be the sweet spot, so to speak. But again, just some research, early research. We're all different. Some of us need more sleep, some of us need less sleep, but just again, start doing your own research, be aware of some of these studies, and sleeping 10 or 12 hours, while we think that might be refreshing our brain, may not be as well as 6.5 to 7 hours, for instance. What doesn't work, sorry to say, any of these brain training games, these apps, there's been a lot of research done in this, and they have not been proven. Like I said before, if you do the Sudoku app on your phone, one, it's you're doing it on your phone, which is not good. Secondly, or your iPad. Secondly, all they're doing is you're getting really good at Sudoku. So after a while, it doesn't have any great benefits to yourself. And any of these pseudo medicine pills and supplements you see advertised on the internet or late night television type stuff, there's been no research to show that any of these supplements can actually benefit your brain. The research that's being done is by the companies themselves, but no independent research, I should say, supports that those pills and supplements will actually improve your brain. So basically, it comes down to 7 steps, and managing your blood pressure, making sure your cholesterol is under control, but with your annual blood tests from your doctor, keep your blood sugar normal as well. So again, your annual physical tests and your blood tests. Get physically active, even if it just means standing up and walking around a little bit in between meetings. Eat more healthy, lose extra weight, and obviously quit or never start smoking. Now, these are also known to prevent heart disease and stroke. Well, surprise, surprise, as I mentioned before, your brain is the biggest user of blood in your system and the biggest user of oxygen in your system. So anything that will help pump oxygen and blood into your brain is going to be beneficial for your brain health. And obviously that means that things that you do to take care of your lungs and to take care of your heart are going to be beneficial as well. So they're all interrelated. And, it's amazing. We're only learning this in the last 10 or 12 years because of the MRI technology that, scientists now have access to. So, before we knew a lot of this stuff when it came to our physical health, so to speak, our bodily health, but we didn't know it when it came to our brain health. And now they're able to show that and prove that. So get your blood pressure. First of all, check in with your doctor. Everyone's slightly different, so you'll get medical advice. But in general, keep your blood pressure in that 135 to 80, 135 to 85 range. Get your BMI below 25, 26, 27, not bad. We're all built differently. You don't have to be overly religious about some of these statistics, but just get it, better to be at 26 than at 32, for instance. A little bit of aerobic activity, just 20, 25 minutes, 3-4 times a week. Combine that with some strength exercises, whether it's isometric exercises you do at home, like push-ups or pushing against a wall or whatever. Or if you have access to a weight room where you can just do some moderate strength build, because you're building up your bones and your muscles. Having a healthy diet, and most importantly, having that annual physical checkup, mostly so you can monitor your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, but also, the doctor can monitor your heartbeat and everything else. How's it going? So Sanjay, I'll get to you in just a minute. I see your hand up. I'm going to wrap up here with a couple quotes and some sources, and we'll just throw it open for everybody. And we'll start with you, Sanjay. There's an old Irish proverb that says, "No time for your health today, no health for your time tomorrow." I have modified that, and I now tell people, no time for your brain health today, no brain health for your time tomorrow. So we need to start now. And as I mentioned, I lived in Asia, and one of my favorite Asian proverbs is, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is today. Well, I would say the same thing. The best time to start planning your long-term brain health is in your 30s and 40s. The second best time is now. And that goes back to Bosker's question about how does he change? How does he overcome 30 years of bad multitasking habits? Well, start today, start tomorrow. It's a lifetime pursuit. It's never too late to start on a path to a better to better brain health. That's really the really great news, no matter what age you are or your parents are or anything else. So, and by the way, I will send Sumit the PDF of these slides. So, and he can distribute them. So if you want to copy the slides, contact Sumit or Harish or anybody else at Forum India, and they'll give you a copy of the slides. Or if you're not part of the Leaders Forum in India, contact me and I'll be happy to send you a PDF of the slides as well. So as I said, most of the information here comes from the book. Thank you, Sumit. I agree. Everyone should go buy the book. It's on Amazon. So please. But yeah, there's a lot of good information. It has won a couple awards. I'm very proud of it. Won a silver award from the Nonfiction Authors Association, and it won a distinguished favorite for the Independent Press Awards of people who publish their books independently. So I'm proud of that. It's available in India. It's on Amazon. There's the link. Obviously, you just go to amazon.com.in for India. Just do a search function. It's there. It's also the book is published in India as well. It's the same content. It has a slightly different cover. It's a slightly different size than the worldwide. That's the standard size in India. So it's available in the leading bookstores in these cities that you see here listed. And if they're not in stock, you can ask them to order from it. It's published by Rupa Publications in India. You can get the book in India, and everywhere else around the world it's available on Amazon in both ebook and Kindle format. I have recently, by that I mean like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I put a series of videos on my YouTube channel. Each one's just 5 to 8 minutes, going into more depth of some of the things I've shared with you today. So that's free. Go to my YouTube channel. You can either search on my channel's name is Stephen Howard on Leadership, or there's an actual little short link here. You can go there, and like I said, all 10 videos are like anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes in length, and a lot of more information than I could share with you here in this presentation. We also have a workshop about decision making based on these principles, based on this understanding, called Making Better Decisions, shifting from mindful, that's 2 words, to mindful leadership. It runs as a full day classroom program or as 4 90-minute virtual sessions. There's a link there if you want to learn more about it on my website. In addition, the Forum India people have been certified to deliver the program, so you can contact them. Again, they can do it either in a classroom situation or in the virtual programs as well. And so it's available to you for your folks there in India on the India Leaders Forum session today. I also have facilitators globally, and I'm looking for more. So if you know anybody who would like to facilitate a program like this, whether it's inside your company or as an independent facilitator, ask them to reach out to me. I'll happily talk to them about it, explain the program. I will take them through the program and certify them, and then they can deliver it either, again, internally in your organization or as an independent facilitator. So happy to do that. And then, as I mentioned, another resource on my website. Every month I read 20 or 30 articles about this topic, about brain health, decision making, mindful leadership, and I upload links to the articles on my website. So if you go to my website, which I'll give you the link in a minute, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a thing called resources, a little tab. You click on that and you click down, and there's a category called brain power and brain health articles, and another one called leadership, well-being, mindful leadership, mindful decision-making articles. So different categories, but in each of those, you'll find article links for the latest articles if you want to keep up to date on some of these subjects. So there's or you can just email me. I send out an email every month when I upload these. Usually it's in the first 5 days of the month. If you'll send me an email, I'll put you on the list, and you'll get an email once a month that says the new articles have been uploaded, and here's the articles I really enjoyed. The website is calianteleadership.com. As you see in my email address, that's also the website address, calianteleadership.com, and that's where you can find these articles. Or you can just contact me. There's the website address. I'm not great on WhatsApp, I have to admit, but if you want to send me a message by WhatsApp, I'll try and respond to it, but you're better off, quite honestly, using email. I'm more religious about email usage than I am to WhatsApp. But with all that, Sanjay, your hand is up. I'll ask you first. As you ask your question, after that, I'll look in the chat box, see what other questions there might be, and the floor is yours. I hope you've enjoyed the information today.
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Steve. Awesome. Just on a lighter side, I am a weekend golfer. So when I hit the golf balls, it goes right and left and the woods and the water body. So I get experience of seeing different flora and fauna.
I was the same way when I golfed, and I often said that golf is a great way to ruin a wonderful walk.
Yes.
But you get more if you're not using a cart. You're getting a lot more exercise when you golf that way because you're crisscrossing across the
Yes.
fairway. So that's good. You're getting more exercise than a good golfer.
Yes. Super.
Thanks
So,
for sharing that. Yeah, go ahead.
So I've got two questions. The question one is there a statistics or research is available if a person knows more than one language, the chances of Alzheimer is reduced?
Okay. You want me to answer that first, or you want to answer it?
That's question one.
Okay. Question two.
Question two is, there are three types of learners, and now I think there are four, but I go back and talk about there are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. And I personally learn a lot from live webinars and through web series. They're quite stimulating. So what do you think, that it's not stimulating?
Okay, great. Two excellent questions. The first one, I do know that there's research that shows, particularly when we talk about stimulating activities, when we retire, learning a second language or a third language is actually very good for our brains. And so yes, I don't know research that directly correlates people who are multilingual with reduction in dementia per se, but I do know there's a lot of research that shows that learning a new language or learning a musical instrument or any other hobby, learning to paint, anything like that is very stimulating for the brain and is one of the ways to stay more active, stimulating active in your retirement years, definitely. So I can't answer the first point. I made a note of that, Sanjay. I'll see what I can find. If I can find something, I'll send it to Summit and he can forward it to you. Or if you want to put in the chat box your email address, I can email you directly on that first one. The second one, there has been some recent research about that. And the research shows that the earlier research said that most of us have a preference for the way we learn, and whether it was visually, orally, or through experience, touching things. The research is showing that it's not so much how we learn, it's how we process information. And we do have a preference. For instance, I'll remember your name because I can see it on the screen. Whereas if you just said to me your full name, I might not be able to remember it in honesty, because I know that I process and I retain information better when I see it than if I only hear it. The research now shows, though, that if you can, and that's what they're trying to tell teachers these days, is to teach this way, teach it in all modalities. So that if you do see a person's, like in this case, I see your name, I hear your name, and then for whatever reason, so not so much in your name, but if you were to tell me something and then I saw it as well, that's one of the reasons I use slides here. So I could say all this information, a lot of it off the top of my head, and you would only hear the information. The reason I use slides is now you're also seeing the information. And then for some people, you need to process it. So some of you will go do some Google research and say, okay, let me find out more about this. And that's, or writing notes. If you wrote notes during the presentation, that's like touching it, so to speak. So the more you do all three of those, the better you will retain information. Does that help you? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve.
My pleasure, Sanjay. Okay, so let me look in the chat box. Where does the fact that we're avoiding something come into play with this? Frank, okay. The fact that you're talking about in terms, Frank, are you talking in terms of how we remember things or how we react to things?
How we react, or when we know we have something going on, we don't want to do that, so we avoid it.
Yeah. Thanks, Frank. That's my New York colleague up there with that good New York accent. One of the things when we put things off, particularly things we know we should be doing, it adds stress because it stays in the back of our brain, or if we have it down on a piece of paper and we keep seeing it all the time, then so then we get so like ticked off with it. Like, God, I'm going to get this stupid thing done. So that's adding stress to ourselves. Now, when it comes to prioritization, though, I'm going to add on to your question there, Frank, a little. One of the things I coach leaders and everybody these days is to have, everyone has a to-do list. And it feels really good to, cross things off your to-do list or tick it off, or, I have a red pen in my case. I'll have to put red lines through it. I now recommend people have two to-do lists. One should be your priority list. So I have it right here next to me. And you'll be able to see I've had a pretty good week so far. I don't know if it may not show up with the screensaver there, but I have a priority list. My priority list only has 5 or 6 things. For instance, on my priority list this week was making sure I had the slides. I revised the slides a little bit for this presentation. I had a client presentation a couple of days ago. I'm working on my next book. So 3 or 4 major things. Everything else goes on my GSD list. Getting stuff done, if you get my drift. And that's everything: paying a credit card bill, replying to an email, whatever it might be. And when I get up in the morning, I only focus on my priority list. And you have to train yourself to allow those other things on the GSD list to not bother you so much. You got to kind of put them aside, realize that they're lower priority, so they're not stressing you out until they become a priority. Like yesterday, one of them became a priority, and it happened to be my credit card payment was due. So, I need to pay my credit card. I'm going to incur late charges. So I took care of it yesterday. But for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I didn't worry about it because it was on a different list, and I keep that list separate so I'm not looking at it all the time. So that's one way to reduce the stress factor of things that we're avoiding doing or putting off. Does that help, Frank? Does that answer your question?
And just another point is, Steve, to your point on the Mediterranean diet, my grandfather was 101, and he ate a pure Mediterranean diet, and he had his full mental faculties until the day he passed.
I'm not surprised, but thank you for that personal example. But I absolutely not surprised. And there's other areas. I mean, there's an island in Japan. It's one of the Japanese islands, and people there tend to live 100 years plus, and they also have a rural lifestyle, reduced stress, but they a huge amount of fish, and it's been shown that the diet is so important. Thanks, Frank. Okay, appreciate that. Okay, I'm just looking here. Samar says multitasking is compelling and becoming natural. So the brain's not naturally evolving. No, the brain hasn't evolved yet, and maybe it will. I don't know, Samar. Sorry, Samar. I'm not smart enough to predict the future here. I don't know if the brain will evolve. It could. But evolution takes hundreds of years, so it's not going to help us. It might help 3 or 4 generations from now, but it's certainly not going to help our brain health today. I would argue with you that the younger generation is going to have much more dexterous thumbs than I do, because all you guys who do your text messaging just using your thumbs, that's probably what I need to learn. That's probably what I need to stimulate my brain, learn how to text faster, because I'm not very good at it. Standing desks, Tamzo, great question. Standing desks are good, but everything in moderation. If I had a standing desk, I'd go back and forth between a standing desk and not, because I don't think standing all day necessarily, unless you have extremely good posture and are conscious of it, I think you could end up with some lower back pains. Walking around, though, is much better. I'm going to be on a phone call immediately after this for 90 minutes with a group of colleagues from around the world. And what I will do is I'll turn off my camera because at some point, because I'm going to have my headset on, I don't mind doing it for you guys, but I'll be listening, but I'm just going to be pacing in my office, just walking around a little bit, going on. As you see, I'm off camera now, but if I turn my camera off, my colleagues won't know about it. I'll be listening to the conversation because someone else is leading that session, but I'll just be up. Movement is good. Any movement is good. Even small incremental movement of 1 to 2 minutes, several times through the day. So Tamsin, if that didn't answer, let me know, but hopefully that covered your question. Amit adds that they're a good option for avoiding too much sitting. Yeah, as I said, if you have both, then I would go back and forth between the two. One of the reasons I don't have it is I tend to take, like I said, when I'm writing, I don't sit at my desk. I'll go sit somewhere else. I'll be more like on a couch with my legs stretched out. So then sometimes when I'm editing, I walk while I'm editing. I'll be pacing around the balcony, just getting some movement in. But Amit, you're right. It's good for avoiding too much sitting. Frank said about his grandfather. That's wonderful. Thank you, Anna, for your comment. Tamsin's put thank you, Tamsin. Tamsin's put my email address in there for everybody. So if you want to reach out to me. Sanjay, your hand up again, or didn't get put down? I wasn't sure here. There's just a lot of that. I guess a lot of people have to leave, so I think we're seeing some people signing off here. I'm just going to the chat box. This is Kagita says, quit her job, experiencing stress and burnout. Now, everyone's privileged to know. How can we get organizations to change? Gita, that's one of my key passions right now. I gave a keynote speak last month at the Global Workplace Wellness Summit, and I shared a lot of statistics. And I even have a blog post. If you want to go to my blog on my website, I did a 5-part series about stress and burnout in the workplace and how important it is. And I think when it comes to workplace wellness, the 3 places to start is helping leaders have to learn how to help employees manage and reduce stress. But they are responsible. Leaders need to create organizations with less stress. The second point is leaders need to learn the signs of burnout, and there's some very significant signs of burnout to monitor and look for. And I'll come back to burnout in just a second. And the third thing is, and this is not true in all parts of the world, but reducing bullying, whether it's mental or emotional bullying in the workplace, creating more of a psychological safety place. So those are the 3 places that I advocate. My next book, which will come out, I'll tell you now, you're going to hear the first public announcement of this. My first book is, I'm planning to come out with it on February the 18th next year, excuse me. And it's going to be about how to humanize the workplace and as a leader. And so that's what I'll be working on over my free time and the Christmas holidays and everything, is pulling that together. I'm about halfway through. So I'm pretty confident, if not by the 18th of February, certainly by the 1st of March. So let me come back to burnout, because it's an interesting topic. Burnout doesn't happen overnight. It builds up gradually. And we need to monitor ourselves as well as our colleagues. And if we're in a leadership position, we need to monitor the people who are working for us. So here's my analogy. It's like what's happening right now, particularly in North America, or really around the world. But in North America, we in the United States, I should say, not North America. In the United States, we had Thanksgiving last week, and so and all of us woke up on November at a certain weight, and then we started eating a bit more. And then they had Thanksgiving weekend, and we probably all put on a pound of additional weight, maybe a bit more, thanks to Thanksgiving. And now we're in the holiday season. We're going to be drinking more. We're going to be eating more of the cookies and the cakes and the treats. And then we're going to have Christmas, a big dinner. And then we're going to have New Year's Eve. And we're going to wake up on January the 3rd. And most of us are going to be 5, 6, 7 pounds heavier than we were on November the 3rd. Well, that weight on January 3rd did not happen on New Year's Eve. It built up over 2 months. That's the same as burnout. Reason we need to catch burnout ahead of time and help people with it. And if you have an employee who has leading towards burnout, if you give them a half day off or even 2 days off now to rest, to recharge themselves, that is a lot better than if they burn out a month from now and you lose them for 2 weeks because they're on sick leave or they quit their job and now you got to replace them. So lose them for half a day or 2 days now, help them get through it, help them manage it. Don't let them fall all the way into burnout. So I hope that helps, Jita.
Yes, Steve, thanks so much.
Thanks. Very, very grateful to you for having done this. What a way to end the week for us out here in India.
My pleasure, my friend. But I enjoy sharing this. I mean, if it impacts just one of the people, it was worth it, because it is a societal issue. So anything any of us can do to spread this message about brain health as a lifestyle choice, the better off, better families we'll have, the better work colleagues we'll have, and a better society we have. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share this with your people.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, and look forward to the next book, Humanizing the Workplace.